Welcome. We are so excited to share with you a partnership with Shilo Military Family Resource Center and Halifax and Region Military Family Resource Center to present to you Talking to Teens. Over to you, Ryan Blackman.
Hello, my name is Ryan Blackman, and I'm one of the counselors for Shilo MFRC, and I have with me today.
Hi there, I'm Carolyn Lacenchuk-Laverne. I am another one of the family counselors at the Shilo MFRC.
And we're going to be presenting Talking to Teens. We know things can be really challenging, and talking to teens for most families can be a little difficult at times. So we've put this together to hopefully help some of you out with just a few little tips.
Now, before we get into the tips of talking to your teen, we really like to make a disclaimer because as our teens grow and develop, we recognize that they're not children anymore. They're starting to look like adults. They're starting to act like adults. But it's really important to remember that their brains are not yet done developing. And so they actually lack a bit of the skill set that we might expect from adults. So there's a thing right at the beginning, right at the front of our brain called our frontal lobe, and it's actually not done developing until about our mid-20s. And the thing about the frontal lobe is it's really important for things like problem solving and emotional expression, skills like judgment. So please keep in mind as you're talking with your teens that these are skills that they still need to learn and they need to practice with before they're actually able to use them really effectively. And so even though they may look like adults and they may be wanting to be treated like adults, not quite done developing yet.
So as I mentioned, we broke this down into 6 tips just to make things a little simpler for you. But these tips, there's lots of tips out there. So these are just some very general things. And the idea is, they don't necessarily have to be done in order. These are things actually more to keep in mind when you're having these conversations, things to just be aware of to make things easier. So just keep in mind that, these are just tips and they're not really meant to be therapy. If things are getting difficult, then, you might want to contact one of us or some other support. And we'll be giving some of those contacts at the end of this presentation.
Great. So our first tip and the absolute most important thing about talking to your teen is actually not the talking part, it's the listening part. And it's so, so important that if we listen, it's more likely to keep them talking. Anybody knows that if you're feeling pressure to provide information, it almost kind of causes you to shut down. Teens are no different. So the more we listen, the more likely they are to keep talking. And listening involves active listening, so really paying attention, really getting into the conversation, putting down our phones, sitting down with them, and really having a good conversation because they're going to know if you're not paying attention. Try and really show interest into what they're talking about. So it might be their friends, their schoolwork, their pets, their jobs, really doesn't matter, but really express interest in what they're talking about. And let their own experience speak for itself. So let their experience be their own. Yes, we were all teenagers once, but being a teenager today is different than the way we were as teenagers. So try connecting with them about what their experience is, but most importantly, how they feel about their experience. So that doesn't always change over time. We can really connect with how we felt as a teen and how they're feeling now, even if the experience should really be their own.
So going from that, actually, that's the second part. We're listening, but what we're really doing afterwards is now we need to validate. So we really want to validate those feelings because if they're sharing those feelings with us, that's a huge step for, that can be really difficult. So if they're taking that risk, we want to make sure we're honoring that. We're saying, well, thank you for letting me know. And just, you want to make comments on it. You want to say things, even something as simple as, wow, that really sucks, can go a long way to make them feel like you're actually listening to them, like they're being heard, like what they're saying has some value. So you want to be able to, give them that sense that you really care about what they're saying. And sometimes, even if we don't really understand what they're talking about, it's okay. Just make sure that they feel like they're being heard. Let them be the center of their story, yes. But you can, this is a place where you actually can use some of your experiences. You can say things like, hey, actually, I remember that happening to me when I was your age. But, things were really different back then, and I can't imagine what it would be like for me now. What's it like for you? Things that are going to keep that conversation going.
One of our other tips is about trust. Now, most of us know that trust is the cornerstone of really secure relationships. And that's no different with our teens. But what we're really talking about here is using that trust that you have in your relationship to help them start to spread their wings. Teenage years are an important time for them to start trying new things, making choices of their own, and increasing their independence in the world. And so when we trust them and show them how much we support them and encourage them, that can really help them be successful in this. So the goal here is really that they start to learn how to trust themselves. So as we boost their confidence in trying a new job or signing up for a sports team, we show them that we believe in them and that it's really important for them to start believing in themselves. And that's what we really want. We want them to trust in themselves. We want them to build confidence in themselves, to be able to go out in the world as really confident, happy adults.
Oh, that brings us to boundaries. Now, we're not saying you need to throw the rules out the window. That's exactly the opposite of what we want you to do. The rules are important, but they're older now, and like Carolyn said, their brain's been developing, so they can understand things a lot differently than they could when they were 5 or 6. And some of those rules now that we put in place, we really need to be explaining them more. Because they're in a place where they want to, if they understand why we're putting those rules in place, then those rules are going to feel like they're less arbitrary and they're more likely to accept them. And when you're doing this, remember, all the things that are changing for them right now. Remember, as teenagers, they're focusing on friendships and social skills. So we might have to negotiate some of these rules. So we might put a rule in place and say, okay, I understand, it's, your curfew is at this time, but this is your only chance to connect with this person. So, okay, maybe this time what we'll do is we will say, okay, when this person's available, then we'll flex the rule that time for those occasions. You still need to be consistent with the rules, though. So once you do decide upon a rule together, they need to be in effect 100% of the time. And I know that, so you're saying there's some exceptions to the rule, but this is when, right? So you want to be really clear, because one of the mistakes we sometimes make is we make rules, but then we forget about them, or we don't always have them in place. And then, frankly, they stop feeling like they're relevant. And so they're less likely to be respected. And we actually need them to be respected because these boundaries are actually really important. What those boundaries really do for us and for our kids and for teenagers is they're giving them a sense of normalcy. So they might not always agree with the rules, they might not always like the rules, but they know what the rules are, they know why they're there, and they know that's what governs their family, that's what governs their life. It's normal.
Oh, emotions. One of our last tips here is about emotions, because it may feel at times with teenagers that the emotions in the house govern the house as opposed to the boundaries. So think about it, right? We've got hormones going on, we've got all this brain development surging, all these new relationships that we're encouraging them to develop, but all of that means really big emotions. And if you think too that managing these and understanding these, it can be really, really difficult for them, right? Because think as an adult, it's really difficult for us sometimes. So learning to label and understand and manage emotions is actually also one of these skills that needs to be learned and needs to be practiced. And it's so great that as a parent of a teen, you get to be their safe zone for a place for them to learn and to practice how to deal with these. So our tip for emotions at the beginning stage is really trying not to let the intense emotions trigger your own emotions. And it's really hard to do. If somebody is getting really, really wound up or really sad or really anxious, it will trigger what's going on for us in our bodies and in our emotions. So this is really a take charge moment. So as the parent, as the adult, really take charge and say, you know what, I think this might be a time where we both just need to cool down a little bit, or we both need to take some deep breaths. Maybe you can do that together. Maybe you actually need to go to separate areas to do that or go for a walk. It's just a take charge moment to stop what's going on, step away, calm down, and come back when the emotions have calmed a little bit and both parties can think a little more clearly. Now what we're going to have is we're going to show you what a practice conversation may look like. So what we have Ryan and a volunteer with us to give us an example of a conversation between a teen and an adult in using some of the tips that we've been discussing today. So what I want you to do as this is going on is watch for the tips that we've discussed and see if you can spot them in action.
Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sorry, I just noticed you don't really seem yourself lately. Is there something going on?
I've just been really stressed out. We have exams coming up and some big final projects due, and it's just a lot on my plate right now.
I bet it sounds like a lot. You know, is there any of it that's really sticking out for you?
It's just finding time to do everything. I'm having to balance my job and studying for exams, and some days it just gets to be too much and too stressful.
It's a lot to balance.
Yes.
Yeah. What's it feel like trying to keep all that in place?
Well, I talk about it with my friends and stuff. They understand too. Some of them have jobs as well, but it's really difficult because I pride myself in my grades and getting good grades, and it can be stressful sometimes trying to uphold that.
Okay, so there's some worry you might slip, something might fall trying to balance everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I remember when I was in school and I had a lot on my plate, but nowhere near as much as you do now. I couldn't imagine it would be like being that busy.
Yeah. It can get to be a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything I could do that might help?
I think if I just make a schedule to try and balance my work better, it might help with getting everything done on time.
Okay. Just something to try to keep you on track?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know, I actually have to make schedules for myself at work all the time. If you want, you know, I'd be willing to sit down with you and we can try to work the schedule together. That might work.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Okay. Well, how about tonight then? Maybe after supper we can sit down and we'll work on the schedule together. And hopefully that helps things a little.
Yeah, thank you. That would be very helpful, yeah.
Good.
So as we watch that conversation, it brings us to our last tip, which is using all of the skills that we've discussed, but using them together with your team. so that it's a joint effort, it's a team effort. It doesn't have to be just you working at it, both of you working at it. So you could see with Ryan, our volunteer, how Ryan was able to listen to the problem. He didn't judge it. He didn't try and problem solve right off the bat. He just listened, and he helped validate what was going on for her and also how she felt about it, and tried to really let her feel heard in the stress that was going on for her. As they kept going through their conversation, he trusted that she knew how to work through her problem, that she knew that talking to her friends and maybe making a schedule, those were good ideas for her because she had come up with them, which gives her ownership and pride that she can do this. They also discussed, right, when it was a good time to get together, talking about boundaries, because things like supper time and family time was still important. Even though it wasn't labeled as such, that was part of what their discussion recognized. And certainly he kept a very calm presence throughout the whole conversation. So even if emotionally this doesn't seem like a supercharged conversation, there was stress and there was worry. And he just kept a really calm presence, knowing that this was what was going on for her, and he didn't have to take that personally. Also, when you're working together, it's so important to remember to work within your team's skill set, and that this isn't always simple for them. Even if it may seem simple for us, it's because we have experience and we've gone through this and we've struggled already. And so it could be still very difficult for them. So start from their starting point in the skill set that they already have.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, I've got our list of contacts here. So my name, as I said, is Ryan Blackman, and I have Carolyn Senchuk-Laverne here with me, and we're here actually, these are just general tips, and we realize that. And if things are seeming like a little bit bigger than what this can handle, or you're feeling like the conversation's going a little too deep than you're comfortable with, or what you know how to have, what to do with, that's when we want you to reach out then to us or to some of these other resources we have here, such as your family info line or SIF map. These are some 24/7 call lines that you can call, or you could always call your local MFRC, and they can direct you to someone that will be able to assist you. So I would just like to say on my behalf, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us with this. I hope that some of these tips help. And I'd also like to say, thank you to the Halifax MFRC for letting us use their WebEx.
Thanks, Ryan. And I just want to add in that I really want to thank you for taking the time to join us with this. I know that it's not always easy to have these conversations, but the love you have for your teenagers and that they have for you are going to bolster these conversations. And it's just a testament to the strength of your family that you tuned in with us today, that you watched through our tips. And like Ryan said, right off the bat and also at the end, we are there for you for supports. We want to help you practice these skills in session with your child or your teen and help make your family the strongest it can be. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.